All right. Thank you very much for joining. This is the daily market health stats from me, Daniel Tenner, aka Swombat, where I look at the data and try and figure out what the hell is going on with NFT markets. Where is it going? Are we heading towards a bull? Are we heading towards a bear? What's the state of the market and so on? And try and base that on data rather than just gut feeling, although there is also some gut feeling involved, no doubt. So let's look at the data first before the gut feelings. So data tells us that actually things are a bit better than they were yesterday. If we look at the top 10, it looks like it's bouncing up a little bit. As we'll see, it's not really broken the downtrend yet, but it's slightly more hopeful. The Zeneca Old Index also looks a little bit better. Zeneca New is still looking pretty dire. And then there's this kind of nice little spike there in the Women-Led Project Index that may or may not be trustworthy. So if we look at why, what is going on actually in the stacked bar charts underneath, which I find is always a helpful thing to do to be able to figure out the truth. Because if the index moves, and welcome No Sensei Productions, thanks for joining us live. If you just look at the index, it can be a little bit misleading. So the index tells us what is happening, but why it's happening, we can get a better sense of that. And can we trust what is happening as well? Can we trust the index? At the end of the day, it's an index that I've put together. I'm just some guy on the internet. So looking into the underlying data and why the index is moving is interesting. So why is the index moving? Well, we had this thing that we saw yesterday, which I said I wasn't really going to trust until I saw a bit more sustained activity. And now we have a little bit more sustained activity. I mean, this is not a great shift in the greater trend of things. This is, not the most exciting increase in volume ever, but it is better than what we've had for some time, apart from the fire sale in the middle there. That was the only point recently where we had higher volumes than what we've had over the last couple of days. So that's nice. It needs to be seen if it stays sustained. I mean, if we were to draw a trend line like this, that doesn't look so good, but the market, this is a fairly volatile and lumpy market, so it could be going, like this, and then sort of slowly up. That's the optimistic scenario. Of course, the pessimistic scenario is, goes down like this. What makes me a little bit more optimistic, or at least slightly less pessimistic, is that there's activity also in other projects. So, I mean, the top 10 is basically at the bottom here of this Zeneca Old Index. And we're seeing this purple project, wherever the hell it is, going up, and here as well, like, so for a sustained period, this yellow project, this red project there. There's activity increases across the board, across all these old projects. The distinction between what's in the top 10 and what's in the Zeneca Old is fairly arbitrary. So I like the fact that there is that reproduction of the activity there. Zeneca New is the only one that's not really showing any signs of any kind of change. And the Women-Led Projects is looking rather suspicious. This blue project feels a bit out of the blue. Haha. It's usually when there's that much activity about something, that's not a good sign, but we'll dig into that a little bit later. Let's look at the trends first. So we saw that with the top 10, there is a little bit of a spike of activity. We'll see if it's sustained or not. That remains to be seen. If we look at the 90-day chart, we can see that it's still within a kind of downtrend of lower tops. Obviously, we don't have the bottom yet if it oscillates back down here. So it's too early to say that this is a bounce, but, it's more likely to be a bounce if it's, or like a change of trend if it's bouncing up, than if it's just dropping. Like when it was here, we could definitely not call it a bounce. Now that it's up here, well, it's too early yet to say that it's really trending upwards again, but at least it's at the top of the channel. So there's that. Let's watch that carefully. If it goes, kind of like this, then it will actually break the trend and be a proper bounce. But right now, there's a question mark on this index. Let's see where it goes over the next couple of days. And the Seneca Old Index is more, I mean, again, these are just charts. They're fairly arbitrary. What they actually mean is really more up to you than to me, what they mean for you. But if we do draw this line here, we see that it is kind of breaking that trend a little bit. It is above the 7-day moving average, I guess you might say. Whether those lines mean anything, again, up to you. But it is breaking a trend that is had fairly consistently for a while now of lower tops there. Draw it properly. And yeah, I mean, let's see if it carries on with this and gets, you know, more activity across the indices, that across the projects. That would be really nice. And if not, well, it's going to continue the downward. I mean, we've had this breakout here when the fire sale happened, and that returned back down immediately. So I guess it depends on what the cause is of this current activity there. I don't know what the cause is of this. So let's find out where it goes. The new index is the one that's definitely not changing trend yet. It's still following its kind of lower highs pattern. It's, yeah, I mean, at least it's not formed a lower low right now in the short term. But yeah, let's see what happens to that one. By my theory, I believe that the top 10 tends to go first, and then the Seneca Old follows, and then Seneca New, and possibly the women-led project somewhere around that sort of time as well. So it's kind of like, you know, the cycle between Bitcoin, Ethereum, Olds, and shitcoins. Yeah, so what happens to, like, so I wouldn't expect Seneca New to be the first one to rebound if there is a turnaround in the market and we're coming out of the Kevin bear market. And if we look finally at, so if we look at the women-led projects index, yeah, so that one is seeing this kind of clear trend break. And my first reaction was, ooh, I don't really trust that at all. Let me see what the data shows. And of course, the data showed this big blue bar, but it also showed these other bars here before. So there was a slight increase of activity across multiple projects. So it's not entirely negative. And then there was this big blue one that feels the least trustworthy of all. I dug into what actually happened there, and basically what it looks like is there was some kind of event in this Asian project, online fashion show of some sort. Like, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe somebody in the audience knows. By the way, if you are watching this live and you have some questions that you want me to answer, please do ask them. Since there is other chat going on in the channel, which is totally fine and welcome, if you are going to ask a question, can you put 3 stars next to it at the beginning of the line so that I can see that the question stand out, so I know that it's a question that you want me to answer. Thank you. What we're seeing here as a pattern on the Asian project is something that usually happens when a mint happens. So at first I was very confused because also, just to help me out, the NFT market has another project called Asian Women, spelled Asian Women, which just minted out last night. But it's a different project with different supply, with different team, I think. And but probably their chart, if they minted out and did well, looks something like this as well, because that's usually what you see after a mint out. There's a rise, and like the hype dies, and like if the hype went well, there's a rise in the sales, then the hype dies down, and then it kind of like stabilizes at some sort of level. So at first, my first instinct, as usual, is when there's some kind of really unhealthy or unexpectedly large activity on a project that doesn't have a good reason for it, is to consider whether to remove it from the index. But in this case, actually, that doesn't, like, I don't rate that as unhealthy activity. there's because this was, I mean, it was hype driven, sure, and hype as usual goes up and down, and like that's what usually happens with hype. But if that happened to some other project because they had, I don't know, a Coinbase partnership or some other random stuff, yeah, this graph is Moby. And as sorry, let me just pause and answer a couple of questions there. The composition of the Zen index is in the description of this video. You can find a spreadsheet with all the projects that are in the Zen index. So yeah, this happens to projects that have some kind of hype event. Sometimes that happens slowly over the space of a few days or even weeks. I've seen this essentially happen to, I don't know, Lazy Lions has been a good example for me. I've seen this happen twice with Lazy Lions. First, when they launched the Lazy Lions bungalows, and then when they launched the Roadmap 2.0, and there it took a few weeks instead of just happening over a day. But it's essentially the same thing. There's a kind of long, slow sort of rise in the hype and increase in intensity, and then at some point it peaks, and then it sort of like goes like this, and then it sort of either comes back down, which unfortunately is what happened with the Lazy Lions, or it sort of stabilizes at some sort of other level. And so I'm going to leave that in as reasonably healthy activity. Let's see whether it does lead to more activity across the women-led projects. I don't know if it will, but it is a legitimate spike of activity there. I don't see a reason to cut it out. Before moving on to other questions, and feel free to ask them if they're a bit longer, I'll answer them after the update. Let's look at just the crypto context. This is the ideal crypto context for NFTs to do well. Ethereum and Bitcoin are both kind of looking like they might not get higher. Maybe they'll break through. I mean, there's that, bull market support band that our friend Ben Cohen loves to talk about, and that I find actually quite useful as well. And sort of hitting against that, are we going to rebound and go down? Are we going to go up? Like, who the hell knows? I certainly don't. And I would suggest that anybody who says they don't is lying. But anyway, that says they do is lying. But the point is, people, like usually when Ethereum and Bitcoin are not doing anything too interesting, that's when the NFT market tends to be more active. Somebody yesterday asked about this, and I missed the question, hence why it's helpful to have the 3 stars. What would happen if Ethereum crashed? Would that lead to an increase in activity? You'd think so, but actually in practice it doesn't. And in practice, when Ethereum is moving really rapidly, what I've observed is that, like for example here, market activity in NFTs tended to dry up around those times, and here as well. So it doesn't actually help for Ethereum to crash. You'd think, oh, NFTs are cheaper, everybody's going to buy them, but actually people are just panicking and they don't want to buy even more risky assets while their main risky asset of Ethereum is dying. So that's usually what happens. And I personally don't think that's rational behavior, because I don't think that, I mean, the kind of returns that I'm hoping to get from investing in small businesses, which is what many NFT projects are in the 10 to 100x type of range. And the kind of variation that we're seeing in Ethereum, even in these volatile times, are something like, if I switch to the percent scale, we're talking about, even at extreme, we're talking about like less than 50% drop. And if you're looking at a 10x, 10 to 20x increase, like for example on my crypto coven investment, I mean, obviously I'd rather Ethereum went up, but I don't care that much about a 20% drop in Ethereum because my wins on those projects are much higher than that, and are measured in lumps of 100%, not in sub 100% measures. So I think that's it for this part of the update, where I just talked to myself. I've answered a couple of questions from the audience already. If you have more questions, please feel free to post them. I'll read through the back chat now just to see if there's something that I should comment on. kind of want to comment on the antonyms and Wonder Pals and all these kind of new mints, where because a lot of confusion I think comes from people thinking that, oh well, I'm seeing this thing mint out and have a lot of post mint activity, so that means the market is healthy. That does not mean, in my view, that the market is healthy. If the only thing that's making money is new projects that have just launched and then they make money for a few days and then they die, that's not a healthy market. If all the older projects, all the blue chips, and we look at the top 10 there, if all those blue chip projects like Basie and whatever are just seeing no volume at all, and just historically no trading going on, and if all these projects that we're supposed to have believed in for the last 6 months are just not really reacting, and many of those projects are actually delivering something of value, well, that doesn't make for a healthy market in my view. Even if there are fresh mints going on, it doesn't build anything long term that is sustainable. So that's why I don't consider the mints like Wonder Pals or antonyms or even invisible friends to be necessarily representative of the market. Even in the depths of the bear market back in November, where everybody agreed that there was a bear market going on, you could still make money flipping whitelists. So, I don't think that says anything about the market being healthy. So there's a question here about transparency. Yeah, obviously I can't vouch in a sort of strong way for anybody because I don't know other people, and ultimately I only know myself, and even myself I know to a certain limited extent. I know that I've had my honesty and integrity challenged in my time running my business, and I feel like I came out ahead on the whole, and I feel reasonably satisfied in my own integrity. But even I am just a human, and I can change, I can fail, I can make mistakes, and so please don't take anybody that I list out here as a kind of strong vouching that this person will never rug you or whatever. Because I don't know, and I barely know myself, let alone anybody else. I'm quite fond of Zeneca in general. He's had a fairly high standard of transparency and responsibility. Even Zeneca is not perfect. I personally think that getting involved in Looks Rare was maybe a slightly more dubious move, mostly because of the other investors who were involved in that. But he was transparent about being involved in that, and I've seen him be transparent multiple times. I find that on a completely other end of the scale in terms of the vibe, somebody like NFT Llama, I've had many interactions with him, and he's a young guy. He's certainly going to make many mistakes along the way, or things that I will judge to be mistakes. But I've seen him struggle with ethical considerations multiple times. And whilst he often makes a mistake first and then considers and then changes, I've seen him change towards the better consistently for a number of months, and that makes me believe in him as an entrepreneur, as a founder, for the longer term. Other ones that I think that all the ones that are exposing lack of transparency in the market at the moment, so Zach XBT, CoffeeZilla, something or other, I tagged him in a tweet recently, and of course NFT Ethics are worth following to if only to get a more realistic view of what is actually happening in the market. I think there'll be more than those three, and I look forward to that because I think we need to clean up the space for it to become what it can be. Punk6529 is another one that I'm always happy to follow and retweet and has many useful thoughts. Who else do I follow? There's a sort of number of other people active on Twitter, not all of which are very active or frequently post numerous threads. But if you look on my Twitter account, there's a public list that I've titled NFT/Crypto Brains. And those are people that I've considered worthwhile to follow. So I follow more people than I actually read. And the people in that list, I make the time each day to actually read through everything that they tweeted. Whilst the rest of the people that I follow, I occasionally go and swim in the sort of main tweet stream. But while following, I think somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people, it's impossible to keep up with what's happening across all those people tweeting. But for those 60 or 70, I think people are in that list, I do make the time to follow them. Oh, Sadvik Seti is another one that I'm quite positive about. Yeah, just have a look at that list, but don't, just because they're on that list, don't assume that they're necessarily honest. They're just people that I've selected that seem to say interesting things, don't seem to be like outrageously unethical. I don't put somebody on that list just because they tweet interesting things that might lead to alpha. Like I wouldn't put, I don't know, Beanie Maxi or Artichoke on that list, even though what they tweet might influence the market. I just don't want to give them any attention at all. So I don't follow them and I don't put them on that list. Are there... so there's a follow-up question, like, are there influencers that are keeping this high standard of transparency and responsibility? I've not seen anybody publish the transparency reports that I put out. I hope that we'll get there. I like to think back to when I started my third business, Grantry. We were the first ones in the industry to publish our prices on our website. Before, it was all a kind of call us to find out the price type of deal. And by the time I left my business, everybody had their prices published on their website. So, it took 10 years. So it might take a while to get to the point where everyone has transparency reports in order to be an influencer in the NFT space. And maybe we'll never get there. But all I can do is control my own behavior. So I'll give it another, we're 23 minutes in. So I think that's probably enough questions for today. I'll be back tomorrow so you can ask more questions then. So, thank you very much for dialing in. Thanks for the questions. Hope this update was useful, and I hope that the graph goes, up and to the right over the coming days, and we can all rejoice at the return of the bull market. Have a lovely day. Take care, and go outside for a walk. If it's sunny where you are, if it's not raining, and it is sunny here, so I might go out. Thanks. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.